Welcome back. This is the Scaling Secrets podcast, and Greg Lindberg is here. Now, Greg is from Lifelong Labs. He is focused on empowering you to live younger, healthier, and happier through wellness, longevity, and leadership. And Greg has been through so much from he's run a $1.7 billion revenue company. He has acquired and transformed over 100 companies that were failing or underperforming and are now worth billions of dollars. So he is here to tell us about how he, as an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and an author turned wellness advocate, can help us scale and achieve all of our dreams and success, etc. So, Greg, glad to be speaking with you.
Really happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Robert.
Wonderful to have you. And so we gave you a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of a hyping up, but in your own words, what's the elevator pitch? What are you passionate and focused about these days?
You have to lean into the pain. The pain of growing a company, the pain of exercise, the pain of hormesis to rejuvenate your body. It's all about enjoying. It's reversing the common value system where pain is good for you, up to a point where it doesn't kill you, obviously. But growing a business never gets any easier. It always gets harder. Every day, every year, there's a bigger and more serious problem. It's never there. It's never going to be a relaxation. So enjoy that and actually look forward to it. If you can train your mind to really enjoy new battles, new challenges, new intellectual stimulation, I love it. For some reason, I have this gene where the bigger the challenge, the happier I am. In fact, I'm only happy if I'm in a fight to the end battle. And so that's why I get into battles, because I actually really enjoy it.
Wonderful. And so this is some energy that we all should be tapping into, right? That the seeking the pain, and there's probably bad pain and good pain, right? Like you think of good
No
pain
question.
as if you're lifting weights, if you're swimming, if you're running, if you're playing a sport, that is painful, but it's pain in service of a goal and fulfillment. And there's these kind of concepts like the runner's high, right? Where you're like in so much pain and discomfort that your brain goes into other places and you have insights and ahas and that accomplishment that you can just accomplish almost anything, right? It's this limitless thinking. So tell us about this, sort of more about this problem you saw. We know that you're all about wellness and longevity. And so what does that mean? Like, where are people stuck and what sort of solution do you provide?
Well, in the new book I just put out called Lifelong, we talk about a program that absolutely will reverse your aging. I've done it with myself. I've proven it with my telomeres. And the program in the book is quite simple. You eat on the weekends and give yourself a 3-day weekend and absolutely focus on intellectual stimulation, mental challenges, daily exercise. Today I just finished a 3-hour exercise. I feel wonderful. I haven't eaten in 85 hours. And I just did 3 hours in the gym, hardcore sweating. And that's what you can train your body to do. And what it's done with my telomeres, if you look at my telomeres from 2018, before I started this whole program, they were 7.1 kilobits. Now they're 8.57 kilobits, which is the average for a 28-year-old. And I'm only 54 next year. So the program works. It just requires an enormous amount of discipline. This hair is all natural, dark red. It was mostly gray. Goatee's coming in mostly dark red. There's a couple gray spots left. My skin gets softer. If you were to touch my skin, it's like almost baby skin. Telomeres, my testosterone is doubled. This program works. The problem with this program is it absolutely is painful every single minute. You're starving. I haven't eaten since Sunday night. Right now, here we are Thursday afternoon. So, so you have to put pain into a category of, is this going to help me? Now, obviously, if you're cutting yourself up and there's no gain to that pain, right? So you have to be very scientific. This program is based on 1,000 research articles, which are all in the back of the book. So you have to, the key, you had a very astute question, Robert. You said, how do you know the good pain from the bad pain? And the answer is data and research. Do the research, read the medical journal articles, look at the data, look at all their citations, and decide if that actually was healthy. And so they've got lots and lots of research on heat shock, cold shock, mental stimulation, exercise, calorie restriction, starvation. They have lots and lots of research on all of that. So you can pick and choose exactly what you're going to do to your body based on the data and the research. Everything in life is data and research.
Wonderful. And so now you compile this data and research into this conversation that we're having and into this book that you've created. And it can be a lot of fun, right? When you jump into some of this research and you see these people that do the biohacking, right? When they do the sensory deprivation or the cold tanks or the fasting. And
Right.
so what stops people from doing it? Is it that maybe they don't have a whole plan and they just like they dabble and then they give up on the fasting when it becomes a little bit difficult? Or do they just they say they can't do it, but why do people fail and not really follow through on some of this crazy stuff, right? To be in pain all the time, to not eat for days on end. Why don't people stick with this and enjoy the results that you are?
That's a very astute question. Yes, excellent question. That every single human has their own set of beliefs. And to really implement this program, you have to believe that the arrow of time, as described by the second law of thermodynamics, is wrong. That you can reverse entropy and you can reverse aging based on bringing more information into your body via DNA replication, via quantum tunneling to non-local information. You have to actually believe that, and you have to read the science, you have to read the data, you have to study it and understand it, and then believe it, because belief is the foundation of all of our action. If we don't believe, we're never going to get there. We won't take the actions. Starting a business 101, if you don't believe you're going to be a success, forget about it. You're never going to make it. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your program. You have to believe in your actions. You have to believe in your success. You have to wake up every day and visualize yourself successful with anything you're doing, with your business, with your life, with your family, with your health, with your anti-aging program, with your fasting routine. You have to visualize it and believe it. Napoleon Hill 101. You have to see it and believe it to achieve it. And that's the challenge with this program. People don't believe it.
And why don't they? Is it just because it's so crazy and fantastic? Like, why is this so hard to believe?
Well, because we've had 50 billion odd people in the history of humanity that we know of who have been alive, and they've all mostly died. And frankly, every one of those people, more than 130 years ago, are dead. No one has done this. So doing something that no one has ever done is controversial. It's out on a limb. It's on your comfort zone. It's challenging. And look, if everyone else was doing it, you're not, it's not something that is easy and in your comfort zone. And it's certainly not proven. I'm talking about something that in the history of humanity has never been done. In the history of humanity, and all the studies I've read, no one has ever rewound their telomere length and lengthened their telomeres from age 60 to age 28. Never been done. So, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry,
want
Rob.
to make sure that I'm not losing you. So you mentioned this whole concept of telomeres a couple of times, and I want to make sure before getting down to on a path that I'm not missing you. So can you explain to us what telomeres are and why that's so important?
The telomeres are the end caps of your DNA. So your DNA is this double helix strand, and at the end cap, there's this thing called a telomere. And it's about 50 applications of the cell. The cell can divide about 50 times before that telomere gets critically short and the cell dies. So cellular death. That's why we die. Old age is simply the end of the telomere replication limit. The telomeres, it's a Hayflick limit. This fellow Hayflick decided that we're all going to live about 120 at the maximum because that's as far as our telomeres will allow us to live. Our telomeres will be critically short, and of our 40 trillion odd cells, they're going to start to die off. And when you got down to your last 20 trillion cells, you're dead. And so the holy grail of life extension is lengthening that telomere to the point where you have an 18-year-old telomere. You got the same telomere as a teenager. And these telomeres are incredibly important. They've even done studies, speaking of teenagers, they've done studies where teenagers with longer telomeres have longer lifespans, they have better fortitude in dealing with their studies, they have better emotional balance, they have better life success. Even in a teenage years, if your telomeres are critically short, you're in trouble. It's all about the telomeres. Now, there's a lot of other factors to aging, mitochondria, mitophagy, all these other things I talk about in my book, but the telomeres are absolutely critical. And there's lots of pharma companies and researchers trying to figure out how to insert a drug into the body to lengthen the telomeres. But you can lengthen the telomeres quite simply by not eating for 4 days or 5 days every week.
And so you're saying just that. That's the low-hanging fruit, pun intended. We can every week, if we just fast for 4 or 5 days, are you saying just that alone will increase our lifespan?
That's another really good question. My program, all I know is my data point. I have one data point, and my data point is a 90-hour a week fast every week. I've done 100. As of today, I've done 118. I'll be breaking my fast. I'll be starting my feast in about 2 hours. After 118 fasts of over 90 hours, and I do at least 2 hours a day of exercise, really rigorous, hardcore cardio, hardcore weights. When I'm feasting, I do a lot of weights, and when I'm fasting, I do more cardio. And it's very, very extensive exercise program. I probably spend about 20 hours a week exercising. And so those two things, I sleep a lot. I sleep 9, 10 hours a night. Sleep is absolutely critical. On the exact same sleep schedule. You need to go to bed at the same time. I get lots and lots of sleep. I sleep like a teenager. Some nights I sleep 11, 12 hours. And then a really high quality diet. You need to focus, tune in your diet. You need to have the right high quality proteins, a lean, clean protein. Stay away from red meats and animal fats. You need to have natural fats and oils. Plant-based fats and oils are really critical, or fish oil. And then you have to have high quality carbohydrates like fruit and vegetables. So you got to plan that all out. You got to be very scientific about this. You can't not eat for 4 or 5 days and then get a couple of Big Macs and a couple of strawberry milkshakes, which I used to eat all the time as a teenager. It was wonderful. But you can't do that. Your body won't work.
So I'm kind of the theme as we're getting into our conversation here, and that's of just being more deliberate and not leaving things to chance. Like we mentioned a few minutes ago about this whole idea of you're not just going to luck your way into success, right? It won't happen by accident. And then the journey, especially the entrepreneurial journey that a lot of people don't want to tell us because it's not sexy, is that it will be failure, 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 failure. One little thing will work, and it succeeded even with all those failed attempts. And imagine if you just kind of did things halfway, or you didn't have a plan, you'd be almost guaranteed not to succeed in what you do. So we need to be deliberate. And then so you yourself are deliberate in this sort of lifestyle that you're living now, which involves the fasting, which involves 20 hours a week of exercise, which involves this 10 or so hours of sleep, and then this specific diet. And so, like, what happens with your brain? Like, when you're a day, 2 days, anything, do you start to go crazy, or does the brain stop working, or do you have epiphanies? Like, what is that experience like for you?
Well, I'll address, very astute questions. I'll address two questions. Your planning and what happens to your brain. And so I think it was Muhammad Ali that said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So, a plan, yes, I have extensive plans. I plan everything. Plan my meals, plan business, plan 10 years out, plan 20, 30, 40, whatever. You have to be a relentless and obsessive planner. And then you have to be relentlessly flexible and adaptable, because you're going to get punched in the face. Your business is going to go out of business. Your idea is going to suck. You're going to tank. It's going to happen. You're going to have things come at you. The government's going to decide you're just too big of a fish, and they need to investigate you. Whatever happens, you have to bob and weave and entrepreneuriate and be flexible and adaptable. Planning is critical, but even more critical is adapting your plan quickly. If you get stuck into a plan, all of a sudden it becomes a rut. A trench becomes a rut. A groove becomes a trench, becomes a rut, and you're stuck, and you're not going to get out of it. I mean, you have to reinvent yourself. I spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting in the insurance business. Total disaster. And you have to say, okay, I forgive myself. I made a mistake. This was I didn't realize that insurance was such a politicized business. I didn't understand the politics of the situation. I'm out of that business now. I'm getting out of that business. So you have to move forward with adapting your plans. And the second question asked is another great question. There's something called brain neurotropic factor. And this is a brain growth hormone. It's very common. If you have a stroke and you go into the ER, they're going to shoot you full of this BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. It's a brain hormone. If you're in shock or trauma, or they're going to get this, and all of a sudden your brain is going to start growing. And so the amazing thing about BDNF is there's two things that increase BDNF. Number one is exercise. If you do nothing else in life, ignore all the fasting ideas. Please exercise every day. It's so critical. Maybe give yourself a day off. to recuperate. But exercise increases your BDNF, it puts you in a better mood, it releases endorphins, as you mentioned earlier. It's the single most wonderful thing we can do to a human body. But interestingly enough, 3 or 4 days of no food, in fact, one study showed that after 4 days of no food, the brain-derived neurotropic factor goes up by as much as 2,000%, 20x. I think right now, my BDNF is probably up 1,000 to 2,000% over where it was Sunday night when I was full of carbohydrates and meat and all this stuff. I was fish and I was eating. By Thursday, I do these interviews on Thursday because my brain is sharp. I can see an email, check an email, and within 60 seconds, type out a coherent, intelligent reply. So it's very real. I have things I do during my fast energy cycle. You're going to sleep less. You're only going to sleep 6 or 7 hours a night instead of 10 or 12. And you better have some intellectual challenge. I'm studying quantum physics. Last night, I was studying the information theory of quantum tunneling. It turns out that quantum tunneling is a method of transferring information on some level. And that's transformational. That's like a massive breakthrough because our body quantum tunnels every femtosecond to stay alive. That means it's going somewhere. Quantum tunneling is non-local connection. So these are things that you got to study. Keep your brain active.
And we have caught you at the peak of your performance, right? Because you said you scheduled these Thursday when you're just about to break that fast.
Correct.
And I think that's interesting to think about that. When someone's living an average life, they're trying to steady. But the fun happens when you're going through the highs and lows, right? When we feel these. Yeah, when we feel these bad emotions and the stress and the fear and the anxiety, sometimes you wish, oh, I didn't have these feelings, but like those sometimes spur you into action. And sometimes you can be happy and be like, well, I'm happy, and that gives me this idea that I wouldn't have had if I was not in this sort of emotional state. And so this is very exciting and this is very interesting to think about. And you're saying that there's all this advice and all the things we should do, but at the very least we should be exercising. That way we can treat our body right, we can give it our best, and we can kind of have these good ideas and take these amazing actions. And then you also mentioned, I want to make sure I remember, to have a detailed plan that is also flexible. And many people, they'll either make a detailed plan and they won't change it, or they'll have no plan. So if you can kind of have both sides of that coin, it's detailed, but we're willing to change it and rework it, then that can get us on that road to success. And you also mentioned a little bit in there about how you've had these like catastrophic failures, which are funny to look back at now because you've come all this way. And so tell us about that. Like, when someone's scaling a business, there's all this worry about things are going to come crashing down or there will be conflicts to deal with. So tell us about some of your conflicts. What happened in some of your scaling adventures?
Well, I mean, at some point, almost every business grows and you realize that politics is your real problem. We all live in a political world. We live under the power of governments, and politicians have different agendas than business people do. So that I was naive to that fact. And I got a lesson. I got my butt whooped hard way by getting involved in politics. So I think that's the biggest lesson I learned most recently is when you business, the very first thing you worry about is cash flow. Well, can I actually pay my bills? And then can I pay my employees? And then can I get more customers? And you're really worried about competitors in those days. I have this competitor and they're taking market share, I'm taking market share from there. You're worried about your product, your customer service, your competitors. And then as you grow, you're worried about your managers. Well, I step back and, maybe as you grow, you hire a CEO for that division, and you buy a couple companies and you have 5 CEOs. And all of a sudden you're worried about your portfolio. And then maybe you borrow some money and you're worried about your lenders and interest rates and macroeconomic conditions and all these things. At some point, you're going to start worrying about the government and what they're going to do if they decide they want to come after you. So that has been a lesson that I've learned most recently. But your viewers out is that you have to love the next challenge. There always will be a next challenge if you want to keep growing. Now, look, we buy out of businesses, and a lot of entrepreneurs, they get to about $1 million in EBITDA a year and they relax because they realize to grow beyond $1 million in EBITDA, you got to figure out professional management. You may have to figure out the debt capital markets, equity. You have to figure out all these things. And it's just easier. $1 million is an amazing amount of money. And they're just going to relax and basically retire. And so they're in their comfort zone. And most small businesses, unfortunately, it's not a decision, but I would say most businesses and most business owners in this country are in their comfort zone. They've reached the size. I'm sorry?
They have their foot on the brake, right?
Well, they have a point of success where they're very happy and they don't want to risk moving to the next level for fear of what that means for their lifestyle, for their reputation, for their social position, and all those things that they have.
And so, is the solution for that business getting out of its own comfort zone is you acquire it and then you put the people in charge, or like how do we break through and get to that next level?
Well, if you're an entrepreneur and you built a successful business, there's a million of these people out there, and you got a nice $5 million business or a couple $1 million business, and you have a burning desire to grow your business beyond that. You want to build $100 million business. You want to build $1 billion business. So the fact is, almost every entrepreneur that gets to 5 million can get to 1 billion if they really simply believe they can and see it, and they can achieve it. But you have to get down and believe it, and then you have to be willing to do the sacrifices. I mean, the sacrifices on the personal side, the sacrifices to all the things in your life are enormous, and you have to really be willing to sacrifice and focus. That's why I'm so excited. All these, it sounds really negative. No, it's horrible. You got to sacrifice and it's painful. But if you can rewind your aging clock while you're doing this to the age 28, say you're in your 40s or your late 30s, and you got a nice, $1 million business, and you're successful, and you want to build a $100 million business, you can do it. Start the lifelong program, read my book, and you can rewind your aging clock to back to your 20s. So you have the same vitality. Right now, I have more energy than I did when I was 28. I didn't exercise as much in those days, and my telomeres indicate that that's my biological age. So key is rewind your aging clock so you have many, many more decades.
Amazing. And so, you're all about doing the like the sacrifice, and you're all having these big goals. Do you have an aging goal? Like you mentioned earlier that, some scientists at some point said we'll live to 120. Do you plan on living to 200 or 500, or like what's your goal for the future?
That's a great question, Robert. When I started doing these, I got the eureka moment when I pulled. I saw another one today. I took a picture on my phone. I could show it to you. It was a hair. Gym. I work in the gym. At the base of my gym, I see like these little gray hairs all over. My hair is mostly red, but it's the gray that falls out. It's so motivating to scratch my head when I'm working out, and a gray hair comes out in my hand. Anyway, I saw one today that was, again, it was red at the base and gray at the tip. And that's my favorite picture of hair, because you can see in one strand of hair that it went from gray to red as it grew out. And so the key to enjoy the process. I mean, in terms of you've got to step into this. It's not, you have to have these goals, you have to have this long term, but it's every single day you've got to wake up and achieve. And so you've got to change your value system so you're not so excited about the comfort of, most people want peace and comfort. You have to change your mindset. There's no peace and comfort on my program. Every Sunday night, that last bite of food is a painful decision. Because I know I'm not going to it's almost depressing. It's like, this is the last blueberry I'm going to eat until Thursday. Anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did. You said enjoy the process and the journey, and I'm getting from you this whole idea. I mean, getting a lot of like sort of like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich sort of advice. And if we want some different results, we need to take some different actions, and sometimes we need to take these drastic actions, especially if we've been sleepwalking through life or in our comfort zone or doing just good enough. And so sometimes we do need these different actions or this different advice to wake us up, and especially from checking out your book. And so in the process of putting this book together, right, and the documenting and the researching and the writing, was there anything that really surprised you? Like, was there something that you learned that was new to you?
Everything is new to me. I mean, I didn't know any of this. I mean, I was gobbling vitamins, and I've been focused on longevity. I have all my books set up in my office, and I go back and I look at, here's a book on longevity from years ago. And, even like taking vitamin C, as very recently before I found this program, I was doing mega doses of vitamin C, and turns out that's not the right thing to do. There's lots of research now coming out that if you overdose on antioxidants, vitamin C is a very powerful antioxidant, you're actually shutting down your mitophagy and your repair mechanisms for your cells, because the actual reactive oxygen species that are covered up by antioxidants are actually healthy because they trigger cellular repair. So it just the punchline here is you have to you have to follow and really follow what the latest data says. So.
Okay, well, do the research, be curious, be hungry for knowledge, and just be the kind of person that can absorb that knowledge and throw away what doesn't work. If you've previously had these beliefs, and if there's enough data to change it or contradict it, then you say, well, I will take this new course of action. And so if someone here in podcast land is watching or listening, and they're just really woken up now, they say, man, this guy Greg, he's done all this crazy drastic things with his lifestyle. He's reversed the aging process, and he also has all this information about buying companies and scaling and succeeding in business. How can someone find out more about you? What's the next step to take? What's the call to action?
Well, I would go to lifelonglabs.com where you'll be able to download my book. And you can go to greglindberg.com as well and read some of the articles there. I think one key message, Robert, that I want to leave with your viewers is that when I had the to sit in a federal prison for 633 days through the course of my legal battles, which I've won the first round of that, and my convictions were overturned. I encountered hundreds of federal inmates in a federal prison, and almost every single one of those people had greatness within them. I could see it. You could tell they didn't. Most of them know it. Most of them didn't see it. But every single one of us humans has greatness within us. We all have an inner greatness. And really, what I want to help people do is unlock their inner greatness. So a lot of people doubt themselves. I don't have the capability, I don't have the talent, I don't have the upbringing, I don't have the family, I don't have the connections, the education. We're all going to make excuses. I don't have the body type, I don't have the genes. Whatever you tell yourself, it's wrong. You out there have greatness within you. I had this guy, a story of Ulysses S. Baker. He was in prison for over 20 years when I met him. And he was the most beautiful poet. He had memorized, and he would recite them to me, over 1,500 poems. And then he had the most beautiful handwriting. And he wrote these calligraphy style hand on these greeting cards, and he gave them out to fellow inmates. I mean, it was touching, it was powerful, and it was genius. I can't do that. I can't compose a single poem, let alone 1,500. And he was, you could just see the greatness. So, Ulysses S. Baker greeting card company, right? And so you have to find the right place in society for you, but we have greatness within us. And everyone can do this. It's not a program that requires any special, you don't need any money. This doesn't require money. I mean, I did it on $300 prison commissary, $360 per month prison commissary budget. So it doesn't require money, it doesn't require education, it doesn't require ancestors or background or anything. You can do this. You just have to decide that you want to do it and believe you can.
I love it. Amazing and powerful. Just make the decision. And you know what? I imagine, Greg, that the podcast listeners right there have this potential because there are for sure people out who they won't succeed and people who even want to try, but those are not the listeners here, right? If someone's listening to this, they are looking for the slightest hint, the slightest sign that greater things are possible, that they need to believe in themselves, they need to take this action. So here's your sign, and here's Greg telling you about how he turned his life around and made these changes and accomplished these amazing things. And so the very next step is to go to lifelonglabs.com to find out about Greg. What's that? Did I get that wrong?
Yes, sir. You got it right.
Lifelonglabs.com. Lifelonglabs.com. And I'm also willing to be told if I'm wrong, if I do make a mistake. So that's an important life skill. So check out what Greg has accomplished. Check out his brand new book and get that advice, because you can't figure it all on themselves. Imagine if you tried to figure out calculus or algebra just on your own in a cave. You wouldn't do it. And so Greg has done this research. He figured out some of these things to just accomplish longevity and wellness, and it pays off in all these other amazing ways in building and scaling your business. And so as we're about to sign off here, Greg, you've given us so much great advice already, but let me just get one last little tidbit from you. If I ask you for a quote or lesson that you think really applies here, or that you think has really helped you so much, what do you have to say as far as a quote or lesson?
Always be a student. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We have the luxury of this immense information that's at our fingertips. And we all stand on the shoulders of giants. There have been so many thousands of people and scientists and philosophers and researchers that we can stand on their shoulders. They publish their research. We talk about Newton, we talk about Watt, we talk about Einstein, we talk about Hayflick, all these people we've mentioned, we can stand on their shoulders. We have the luxury of an immense amount of scientific and medical knowledge to stand on. And that's what I've attempted to do in the book. The credit for this book is not to me. The credit for the book is to the thousands of people that got our scientific and medical community to where it is today. And
Wonderful.
You can tap into that.
And you can tap into that by going to lifelonglabs.com, and we'll see you there. And thank you very much, Greg, for showing up. You're an inspiration.
Thank you, Robert. I really enjoyed it.
All right.